everything's up and running. We didn't change anything. I didn't close anything. Thankfully, I've done that before. I'll close I'll close all the windows out and then have to record right after. And that's always frustrating.
Mm.
Anyways, somehow we transported in time, and it's now One Piece film Red dub has officially been released into the world, and we're here to talk about it in more detail, filled with spoilers. So if you guys haven't seen this yet, go watch the spoiler-free review real quick. But if you have seen the film and you're ready for more, let me say welcome to the AVR podcast here on the GenreVerse Podcast Network and YouTube channel. Hit the red subscribe button. Thank you to all 902. We just gained one.
We got one.
Last recorded. We got one. Thanks to all 902 subscribers as of recording this video. We really do appreciate it. And if you're listening on the podcast, on your favorite podcast app, give us a follow there. Leave thumbs up, down if you need to. Let us know why, so we can figure out, is it our trash opinions, because those aren't likely to change. But if there's something with the show's formats, or something like that,
or my background, my ugly background with my terrible stickies, which I'm hoping to fix in the weeks to come.
Things that we can change, we're always down to improve things for you guys, the audience. Check out our website, lrmonline.com, every day for all entertainment news, needs, and opinions. I'm Kyle, one of the 3 regular co-hosts here on AVR, but I've got special guest author. See, I added an accolade this time. Author, former LRM online editor-in-chief and co-host over at Breaking Geek Radio, the podcast, Joseph Jammer Medina. What's up, buddy?
What's up? Not much. Just super excited to talk spoiler discussions about One Piece film Red.
Yes, indeed. Freaking all sorts of spoilers. Uda's the bad guy, and freaking everyone and their mother shows up, including someone named Mont. No, I'm joking. I know that one. But
so wait, here's the question.
Joke. It's filled with all sorts of surprise moments, and there's death and destruction. And did we spoil enough already?
I think so. But here's my question for you: at what point did you realize that she was going to be the bad guy, Uta?
I'm trying to think, because I think it's the second time she starts singing and it's still happy that I'm like, okay, she's a little.
Was it when she was
she
was defending herself against the people who tried to kidnap her? Was it that moment?
No,
or was it when she tried to tell Luffy to quit piracy?
I'm trying to remember exactly. It was after she had kind of locked up the bad guys on the sheet music, but even then it's her defending herself, so to speak, like you said. And it was shortly after there, but it was before she kind of starts to crack. I was just like, something's a little weird about how, like, she seems too in control, and that's never a good thing.
So for me, I think it was it happened at an embarrassing late moment. It happened literally as she threw off Nami into the freaking sheet music. That's literally when I was like, oh shit, she's the bad guy. But I raised my eyebrow when she was talking to her fans and says, we're gonna have this concert go on forever. And I was just like, that's weird. I thought maybe she was just overly ambitious. Maybe she is the type of person who would have invested in Fire Festival or something, who was just like, this is going to be the best thing ever.
When we were young festival and stuff,
Yeah, like, I think maybe she was just overly ambitious, overly naive. But then I was thinking to myself that, it was very clear that she had a naivete about her, that she was, like, optimistic and starry-eyed is not the right word necessarily, but she liked to think of the best, and that her music can save people. But for me, I was thinking, okay, her arc is going to be realizing that the world isn't that perfect, and her music can only do so much. Or her arc could be something, maybe grounding herself a little bit in something, or maybe not that. it'd be less black and white. She'll come to realize a less black and white perspective of the world. And whoever the villain would be would help teach her that. Didn't realize that she would actually be the villain, though. So it was definitely something that threw me off. And then when I realized that she wanted everyone to stay with her forever, I was like, this is like some Jim Jones shit going on here.
Very, very much.
She literally wanted everybody to commit ritual suicide with her and just be with her forever. That's crazy.
Suck their souls.
That was a really cool twist. Did not see it coming up until way too late. That I'm slower than most people, so there's that. But still, I think they did a good job of hiding that in the advertising, while still giving us kind of an idea of what to expect. So I think good on you for that, One Piece marketing team on some level. And it's, I just didn't. I thought it was really gutsy that they went that way, and yet they managed to do it in a way also where they made her the protagonist in a way. And one of my biggest weaknesses of a lot of shonen movies is that there's no character arcs, because no one can change. No one can change outside of the mainline series, because you have to make sure that they essentially retain their personalities in the series. But a good way to circumvent that is to have another main character who does change, and that's Uta in this one. And I guess she's not technically the protagonist, though she's no less the protagonist than Thanos is in Avengers Infinity War. So I guess I'll give it to you on that way. But yeah, she's definitely the dynamic character who commits to a specific direction about going things, and then everything kind of revolves around everyone reacting to what she does. But yeah, I thought she was a really strong antagonist. I think she was one of my favorite antagonists. I think Zed in Film Z is still a better antagonist. I mentioned him in spoiler-free review. He's so interesting. So in One Piece film, he's essentially Film Z. Zed is someone who trained like generations of Marines before essentially becoming disenfranchised by the world government, and then kind of thinking they aren't doing enough and becoming kind of radicalized. And at the end, it ends with him essentially being killed by the very people that he trained. And it's a very heartfelt and emotional thing. So that to me is just how much he's ingrained in the DNA in the world of One Piece is really hard to overcome. But the fact that they did that with someone like Uta, which I guess she's still ingrained in the DNA of One Piece, how they connect her to Shanks. But, the fact that they didn't connect her to like the world as a whole as much, but still managed to make her really interesting to watch, I thought was good. So overall, I really enjoyed her as an antagonist. What about you?
Do you think? I thought she did. I thought she's a good character. The motivations are interesting. She's got this gift that has a downside, so to speak, a more of a potential downside, but they figure out how to get around it. But the whole accessing that demon song, if you will, I forget the tech musica or whatever they called it. But besides accidentally accessing that, they make her sympathetic. You can easily get into her mindset. I mean, look at the world we live in. It's trash. I'm always talking smack about humans and planet Earth. It's like, where's that asteroid I ordered? But
it's not Amazon delivery, that asteroid.
I know. Everything else is. But you can also understand why she is so naive, because of the position they put her in. They find out that she's got these abilities, and something bad happens, and they try to squirrel her away, which creates this whole skewed view on the Earth.
And she's isolated. She's literally lived by herself.
They squirreled her away in that town, micronation or whatever you want to call it. She's interesting in that aspect, and the fact, they work in a good way to build her backstory with, like you said, Shanks and Luffy. I wanted to, the question I had for you on her is, excuse me, Do you think the isolation of her and her world essentially, and the way that most of this story takes place in a dreamland of sorts, do you think that was to make this movie as isolated from canon as possible, to kind of be that that one shot device, talking in comic book forms here, that one shot device to get people interested? Do you think she was specifically designed for that, or do you think that's just a happy coincidence?
I think it was a happy coincidence, because if they really wanted to isolate this from the series, they wouldn't have had the Marines involved, and they wouldn't have had Trafalgar Law and Bartolomeo involved, who you don't know who any of those characters' names are. So Trafalgar Law is the character with the katana slung over his shoulder.
Okay.
Bartolomeo is, and he's an ally to Luffy, captain of a different pirate group. They're part of the Worst Generation, which are...
That's the ones that I was mentioning in our spoiler-free review, where I was like, I wish I had known a little bit more about that connection, and kind of the... I got a sense watching it, I kind of got a sense that that group is almost meant to be a mirror of the Straw Hats in some ways, like opposites, if you will. Like certain characters match Straw Hats, but are somewhat opposite, although still similar.
Yeah.
Was I supposed to get that feeling?
Yeah, I think so. I think that works.
Okay, cool.
Like, they're not like mirrors. But
yeah, that might not be the right word.
I know
but
what you mean. Counterparts.
There's the word. Yeah.
But Bartolomeo is a little bit different story, and they don't think they mentioned his name in this movie, but he's the rooster guy who saves Luffy from Uta, and he works with Law. But he's introduced in a later arc in the series as this guy who's just like, he's in a coliseum fighting with a bunch of people, and people are just like, this guy does not give an F about anybody. He's like a total like badass / like terrifying, whatever. And then you don't quite understand what his thoughts are on Luffy until one point you realize, oh no, he worships Luffy and looks up to him, and basically is a super fanboy about Luffy. And so he's separate from Law as well. So he's not a part of Law's crew. But yeah, that's who that is.
That was the one with the protective bubble.
Yes.
Yeah. I definitely got the whole feeling that he was a big fan of Luffy's.
Because like essentially there's this part where they have to take a 2-year time skip, and in that time skip, I guess the legend about Luffy and what he did had grown and has spawned fans, and Bartolomeo was one of them.
Okay. What about all of the other characters that were added into this? I mentioned in the spoiler free that the ending especially is like an in-game level event, where you had the Guardians, you had the solo people that weren't necessarily Avengers, and you had Wakandans and magicians and all sorts of stuff coming together, and you get that a little bit at the beginning with some of the antagonist groups, some of the bad guys, if you will, in One Piece to the Straw Hats, and then at the end you get the big team up, including some of those bad guys, for lack of a better phrase. Your camera, I don't know why it keeps losing its focus.
Sorry, go ahead.
What aspects of that did you really enjoy, or did you find any of them to just be like, oh, why are they here, or anything like that? I mean, it's a lot of stuff going on.
I think I did not like Trafalgar Law and Bartolomeo being in this, because it felt like they were just in there for fans.
And they were in it so much,
especially Law, because Law is seriously like a fan favorite. People love him, because I feel like you could have accomplished most of that if you had Zoro and Sanji or somebody off doing something else on the island, and they at the beginning, and they could have come in at a different time and fulfilled that role in the story, and you could have utilized the Straw Hats better. So I think that would have been a better way to do it. I think the Marines joining in made sense, considering how big the ramifications were. So using Kobe and Helmeppo, I could see them being used in it, and that's pink-haired guy and guy with like the visor thing, which you read the first 30 chapters of One Piece. Do you remember who they were?
No.
So you remember that little boy that Luffy saves from that big woman on the captain in the ship? That's the pink-haired guy. He'd gotten older, and he's actually become a respectable person within the Marines. And you remember that guy who was who they fought early on, where he was an antagonist early on, where he was like a spoiled rich boy whose dad did everything. That's the guy with the visor, who they essentially became partners.
Wow. Nifty. I wish I had realized that.
So I think that, and they have, I think, a good number of the Marines, like the good ones that you would think would showed up pretty well. So I think they did a good job with the Marines. Who I don't think we needed were the Big Mom pirates. They were weird. I don't know why they were there, other than because I think we could even see this from the notes that we got
fan service,
from the
and
studio.
We don't mean the anime fan service. We mean the geeky fan service. And that's what I figured.
Yeah, which I don't like. Call me Tony Gilroy, because I don't like fan service like that. But no, seriously, because I know when we got the notes back from the studio, I'm like, don't mention whether or not Katakuri comes back as a villain or an ally. And I'm like, okay, well, that's clearly because Katakuri is a fan favorite. He actually has one of the best fights with Luffy later on in the series, and is a great character. But like, it's like, why the Big Mom pirates? Like, why incorporate them into this? It just doesn't feel natural. And Brule, of all characters, having such a prominent role, I don't know why that was weird to me, but it was.
Just for the mirror thing, I guess.
Because Brule is not even a popular character. I guess for the mirror thing.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I'm pretty sure it's just to have that mirror for as a device to get people where they need to go.
Right. I guess that's one way to do it. But it just seemed weird that they would have the Big Mom pirates being involved in this on some level. So I think I would have been happier if they had no Trafalgar Law, had no Big Mom pirates, had no Bartolomeo, and then utilized the Straw Hats more effectively. Had them spread out at the beginning so that we got introduced to a few of them at the beginning, a few of them later, and a few of them later, and they all contributed in that way. I would have been more fulfilled with that. But, you know, I'm someone who loved when Luke Skywalker tossed the lightsaber over his shoulder in The Last Jedi. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I'm mostly going for what can tell the most effective story, not what can give me the most One Piece bang for my buck in as short a period of time as possible. I'm not looking at it at that level.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think what they did, I can understand the parameters of the studio saying, hey, you have to have Trafalgar Law on this, and you have to have these Marines, or the Big Mom pirates in it, or Katakuri in it, and then you're good to go. So given those restrictions, I think they did a pretty good job. I just would have done it differently.
I can respect that. Like I had said in the spoiler-free review, you'd asked me about the just me not knowing as much of the relationships, and while there were a few that I wish I did know a bit more, there was enough in there for me to tell who was, and even with more nuanced interactions, like I mentioned, the Law and them, the God, what's their pirate or their group's name?
Law, the Heart Pirates.
The ones that are counterparts to the Straw Hats. Anyways, I knew that they were
the Heart Pirates.
Heart Pirates. There it is. I knew that they were, that type of group. They did a really good job with most of these characters. And the Big Mom pirates, I mean, they're a known name from the source, and it was clear the mirror was going to be very important for the way they were executing this. So I can say, even as a relative unknowing One Piece guy, they did a decent job, and I can respect where a fan would be like, I could have done without this one or changed that one up. It's just good to know that this is executing a good medium between those in the know and those out of the know.
Yeah definitely. And I mean, and it seems like they do an effective job to at least give you an idea of, like, you don't know who they are, but you kind of understand the dynamic and relationship between them and the other characters, and I think that's really good. And I think one thing that this movie does, doing the way it does as opposed to the way I suggested, is that it really kind of displays the scope of One Piece in that there's usually 3 to 4 sides to any particular story. And so in this one, you have like, they kind of retain that. You have like Luffy's side, you have another pirate side, and you have another pirate side, and then you have the Marine side, and then you have another side. Like they kept that like that multifaceted sort of thing that you generally see in the series. So you kind of don't really know who to trust at all times, and you don't know where the alliances are. And I guess in that way, you kind of keep that in this particular iteration of the story, though everyone is pretty allied. Like I never really got the impression that Brule was going to betray them at any point. It seemed pretty like, you better fight against Uta or you guys are screwed.
Yeah, I was gonna say the whole if we don't get out of this, if none of us get it, we're all dead. Like all your plans mean crap, and no world left to plunder for those that weren't near a snail. That was interesting on how some of the technology stuff again was amped up in this, and mixing their in-world older stuff with so much futuristic stuff in the concert area, and it was all interesting.
Really, actually, I have a lot of questions still. Oh my god, I lost one of them, but I'll guess the other question.
I was going to have a question for
good. Okay, go for it.
I wasn't trying to wrap up. The Shanks aspect of this, and connecting Yuta and Luffy via Shanks, and the fact that Shanks is such a huge character in the series, plays huge role for Luffy on page or on screen or not. What's your take on their use of him and having the adoptive daughter of Uta and whatnot?
It was okay. It was fine. It wasn't super special. I mean, he's quote unquote important, but he's probably in the equivalent of like 20 pages of the entire series so far. Yeah. He's not here a lot. Okay, more than 20 pages, but like he's not in it a lot. Right. You kind of just sense his presence. You kind of see him throughout in some way, and so plausibly,
Tails, Shanks and his crew were just doing this, and Luffy talking him up, and yeah.
Or you hear about movements that he's making through like conversations between the 5 Elder Stars or between the Marine Admirals and all that. Like all of that, like that's kind of where you get that information about Shanks. But I think they do a good job of making his character relatively consistent in terms of personality. Like he's a good guy. He's really strong. They didn't really add anything super new to him, to be perfectly honest. And the explanation at the end for why they left Uta behind wasn't satisfying to me, because what it wasn't an explanation. Literally what it was is exactly what he said. It was just like, this thing destroyed this whole city. Unrelated, we're going to leave her here because she needs to be a singer. It's like, why? Why did you leave her behind? That justified nothing. Is that just me, or were you also similarly baffled?
The way I took it is the initial idea to leave her behind, which is before the monster attack, was just them not wanting her to be. It was the effect her singing had on the crew, and that making it a potential danger. And so they didn't want her to be in danger because the whole sleeping thing that she can induce. So that's why they initially wanted to convince her to stay, and then she was kind of against it, but they were gonna have it happen. But then the monster attacks, and that's when he says, lie to her, tell her we did it, we pillaged the village and left her behind, so that way she wouldn't want
that almost makes it worse
after them. That's kind of the level of or order of events. They really seem, because you remember Luffy talked about falling asleep and stuff like that. That relates to her and her power, which is why she was able to do what she could do with the monster unknowingly. And then they say, hey, you need a villain. This is Batman. You need a villain. And so the red hair said, blame us. load up some boxes, make it look like they took stuff. I don't know if they actually did pillage the village or not.
It looks like they did. They had a bunch of treasure on there.
Well, it was all just closed boxes, though.
Oh, that's fair.
So
I mean, I guess the main question
is, they have their back. They have their back to them. Make sure if she looks out that she couldn't see, she sees what looks like cheering, but in reality, they're toasting. Hey, best of luck to you, Uta. This is not the life for thee.
That makes it worse to me, because like the impression I got.
It's so typical.
No, because the impression I got was that when it's revealed why they did it, we're supposed to be like, oh, that's why he did it. I understand. But instead, it's more of just like, literally, it was him being like, we need to get rid of her because she's a hazard. Oh, thank God. Now we have an excuse to get rid of her. Now we have a way to do that.
She's a hazard to herself. If she induces that state around the crew, she's left defenseless. It's not just them, because
did they mention that explicitly?
If I'm not mistaken, they did. I don't think I can create that much.
Okay, because I don't remember that. It's
nothing.
Maybe I just that glossed over me, because that makes a little bit more sense. And then now they have a villain, but it's just weird to me how it's just like, oh yeah, let's leave her in a freaking country where there's one person left.
The goal was to convince her that the school and the singing and all of that would be the best place for her. They wanted her to choose that of her own free will. And then you have the incident with the monster, and that becomes the opportunity when she's resistant to staying of her own free will. It's like, damn, this bad thing goes down. She's now she's a risk to others, not just herself, even potentially. That's how I took it following those events.
And that makes sense. Can you also clarify, and I might have missed this too.
I'll try.
Because this was explained to Uta, and then Luffy was like, see, it was all a big misunderstanding. And then she was just like, yeah, I knew already. Yeah. But then at the end, she seemed regretful. What was it? Was there new information that she got that made her change her mind at the very end?
I don't know. I don't.
Because by the end, she was regretful and realizing she did something bad and that she tried to save people. I'm like, was there more information that we didn't get that made her sort of like, oh, I do love you, Shanks, like my real dad?
I don't think it was necessarily anything new. I think it was just the fact that of all who was there to try to stop her, and I think it just triggered old emotions. That's kind of what I got out of it. Okay. This is a big movie about those long, deep relationships, not just between Shanks, her, and Luffy, but even Luffy and other pirates, other groups. So that's kind of what I took out of it. And I think you're right there. I don't think there was a moment where the good side wins over the dark, and they even go through moments of showing where she can see just how awful things kind of are and how dark and dreary.
Yeah, it's when the Marines start turning on the people, right?
Yeah,
and
they're killing them, and there's even a sense of futility to her. She's giving up. And maybe giving up is what allows her to find some remorse. Because I mean, the whole time she's trying to control things. She's using the wake shrooms, which is hilarious. She's doing speed to stay awake. So that's all got to be taxing. You don't even have time to consider once you've decided you're going to wipe out half the universe. You're so focused on it that you don't get time to understand where you might be wrong now that you've started the journey. And I think maybe in those moments where it's like it's futile, screw it, whatever. I think there's where you find your moment to reflect as the fight is done. So
let's talk about her devil fruit power, because I thought that was interesting. I know at the beginning of the movie when she was just like passing out food to people, and I'm like, what is this ability that she could just fabricate, fly, control people, do whatever she wants? I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna have to sit back and just assume this movie makes no sense because it makes no sense.
She's an alchemist.
Yeah, like I know what idea. Like how is she doing this? I was really confused, and I was like, they're probably not going to address it. Thank God they addressed it because it made it so much better. Because it kind of mixed in with partway through the movie where you saw Luffy and other people like asleep in the same place that they were at the beginning of the movie. Yet we had just seen them running around at different parts of the island, and I was just like, what the hell is happening? And what?
Yeah. Dream World.
Yeah, and then the Dream World, I'm like, oh, okay, so she just controls, she sings, puts people into her dream world, and then can control everything within that dream world. I'm like, oh, that's fucking cool. That's a great ability.
That's an amazing ability. I can do so much crime. I mean, so much good things.
She's basically Scarlet Witch in that world,
Yes.
And she definitely pulls that Scarlet Witch card as well, when she becomes total yandere girl partway through the movie with her open wide eyes and tilting head, and one of the coolest songs, which when she's fighting, having controlling people to fight the Marines, I thought was a really cool fight scene, and I loved it so much. I think that was one of the cooler songs where you had like a little chaotic craziness come into the actual song, and then it became like a little music video. Like a lot of this movie is like a music video. But yeah, what did you think about her devil fruit abilities?
It's like I said, it's an interesting power. It's a fun world to play in because you create a sandbox with whatever you need. I mean, if you need a character to be able to control something or fabricate things, you make it happen. If you need it to if you need that world to be changeable, I mean it's a sandbox, and when when that method is well utilized, it's great, and I think here it was very well utilized. When it's not so well utilized and you just get things happening because the writers couldn't figure out any other way for it to happen, that's when it can be, that type of ability can be frustrating. There's lots of overpowered characters. Christine and I watch a crap ton of isekai and stuff like that, and they always are massively OP. So I appreciated this this movie and how they executed it for sure.
Yeah, like the thing, there's definitely, she kind of definitely is OP, but at the same time not really, because it's within the confines of the dream world, and it just makes a huge difference. It was brilliant. It's like how they executed that dream world. As I was watching it and I had that concern, I'm like, oh god, I'm just gonna have to pretend this is its own separate thing. But now I'm just like, oh, okay, that makes perfect sense. I get it. Good job. What did you think of the climax of the movie?
I mean, it was to be expected. As soon as you hear about a giant monster, you're like, okay, we're gonna fight a giant monster at some point. Whether or not Uta became the monster, merge, or something like that, I wasn't quite sure.
I didn't quite understand the monster thing, to be perfectly honest. I just know monster bad. We must fight monster. That's basically where I was.
Even I'm kind of confused when I was watching it as to what's the difference between in the ways that it, like the legend versus what woke it up this time. I got confused.
I have no idea.
I agree. Monster bad.
It's literally like watching Mission Impossible. I don't know what the hell's happening at any point in those movies, other than whether or not I should be happy about the current position Tom Cruise finds himself in. That's the limit to my understanding of Mission Impossible. And if I can get an understanding as to how I should feel about it in a moment, I'm usually okay. And that's how I felt with this one.
The fight is great. The coordination, using the father-son duo to communicate between Luffy's side and
did that
Shanks'
feel random
side
for you? Because I had like Yasop and Usopp or father son.
The dad showing up. I know the son. I didn't know about the dad. And again, you can just plug in what's missing for the most part, enough to enjoy it. I love the bouncing back and forth. Really, really great usage of the contrasting landscape colors and stuff like that. The type of destruction, the spectacle's great, and Luffy transforming, going Super Saiyan or Supersonic or whatever.
Going Gear 4. No, Gear 4, but then 5 for like literally 2 or 3 shots. It's actually so this is the first animated representation of Gear 5, which was most recently shown at the end of Wano, and I'm curious because you don't even see a full-on actual shot of just him in Gear 5. You see it through a hyper warped and stylized moment, and then you see him from the back. You never actually see him in the distance in the back. But that was another thing they didn't want us to talk about in the spoiler-free discussion, was that he shows up in Gear 5. Hey, he shows up in Gear 5. But you don't really get a good look at him. But there was a chill moment there, and I don't know if you caught it. Probably not. Was in that moment when he and Shanks were kind of fighting in sync. There was the part of the music where it goes dun 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 dun.
I don't think I really caught that.
It's from the original opening of One Piece.
Okay.
Like it was just kind of like a little note from that original opening incorporated into the score. I don't even like that opening. Everyone fucking loves We Are. I don't like it, but I definitely like the musical notes associated with it if used correctly. And it was used effectively in that moment and mixed in with the Gear 5 thing. It was just a nice emotional climax, and I thought it was done very well.
Yeah, it was like I said, it was a fun ending and really awesome to see on a big screen. It makes me super excited about next year, because so far I've never seen a big action anime on the big screen. I've seen dramas and stuff like Shinkai and Miyazaki films, but we get the Gridman X Dynazenon movie next year, and you know me, I'm a huge fan. I mean, I got my Dynazenon back there. I'm stoked to see something like that on the big screen, a big action shonen series. Just yes, please God, with mechs and everything. I'm super excited about that. Yeah, it was well animated, well executed.
How did you feel about the Marines being incorporated into the story? Do you feel like you got a good feel for the scope of One Piece within this tiny confines? Were you surprised at all at how big it was compared to when you last left off in the 30 chapters that you've read of the series?
I wouldn't say I was necessarily surprised. I knew enough about the freaking middle long line, and what's the other one? I knew about the two bisecting, how big each ocean is, and how much,
the red line and the grand line.
Like there you go. I was aware that there is a huge scope, and I knew about like there is a world government. I knew about the so I had an expectation that things are definitely really, really big as compared to, like you said, the kind of scope there in Eastern Blue or East Blue.
East Blue, yeah.
Yeah, where you start out. But I thought it was interesting to kind of show the threat that it's a world threat. She's a world threat. And of course you're going to end up getting, government and military and private security. You're going to get everyone involved when everyone is in danger. So while the leaders, the guy that looks like a gangster and the the other guy, their respective groups and things that it all worked. This all fits. It's a massive cast, a massive amount of involvement, and they managed to balance it out, give enough screen time for for me to hear fans reacting, and for me to, you know, draw the minimum I needed to get the story. So in all of that, man, it's executed really, really well. I can't speak on to any moments that hit me because, again, I a lot of these characters I didn't know, but it speaks on the writing team, or writer, sorry. Always thinking of like shows with writing teams here in the West. It speaks well on the writer and all those involved in story decisions on executing this for someone like me with very little knowledge to, you know, like I said, enjoy most of it. Not a musical guy, but
yeah. That's the fact that you gave it a B- and you do not like musicals at all, I think is telling. I love musicals mostly. So for me, I'm just like, hell yeah, bring on the next song. Like, I want to see how they incorporate it into fight scenes. And I especially love when they're incorporated into fight scenes, and the fact that it's like sing fighting. I'm like, yes, sign me up. I am in.
Yeah. So any other things to go over?
Let me think here.
I mean, we talked quite a bit on the last one, so I'm not sure what else is there.
I think...
well, I do...
Yeah.
Well, no, we kind of covered that in the spoiler-free. I was like, well, I always do art and music, but we kind of discussed that, and music's been discussed all the way through, so...
But what about music? Yeah. What about art and music? What do you
mean? Whenever we wrap up a series, usually the first episode, and then at the end we talk about, like, kind of rate the art, the anime, you know, animation itself, and music, two very, very important things in anime, the animation itself and music. There's so much that is enhanced by a great soundtrack, not just the OP and ending, but even the soundtrack, you know. But we've talked about it throughout. We've mentioned CGI was rough here and there. 2D looks great. Yeah, so I'm good. I'm satisfied.
And really quick, just to say before, they had two writers. Had Tsutomu Kuroiwa and Brooklyn Elomar. Okay. So two writers for this one.
Two writers.
But one has a screenplay credit and one has a co-writer credit. So I don't know what the heck that means.
Yeah. We'll just say to those involved in story decisions, including the writers.
What's also really weird is the Brooklyn Elomar person also has a special thanks credit in Encanto and a costume design credit both in Red and in Raya and the Last Dragon. So this person's working both in the East and the West.
Interesting.
So very Brooklyn cool. Elomar, pretty cool. Don't know who you are, but clearly you have connections on both sides to see Vinland Saga, Boruto, Jujutsu Kaisen, and One Piece as an animator in relatively recent episodes in Wano.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a train. Yeah, I guess we can leave it there.
Yeah, I think I'm satisfied. I think, just to reiterate my overall thoughts, if you're a One Piece fan, definitely a must-watch movie. I think it's one of the more entertaining ones. Definitely not canon, but still a good time, still worth checking out. I think it's better than Strong World. I think intellectually I like Film Z more, but I think on a more visceral level, I like this one more than Film Z. Though to be frank, I haven't watched Gold or Stampede. I just never got around to watching those, so I can't really speak to those. But as far as the 3 of the recent 5 that I've seen, this might be my favorite. It's kind of on par with Z in a different way.
And if you're either not a fan because you've never read or seen any, or if you've only been, a few episodes, few chapters deep, especially if you like musicals more, I also think that this would definitely be up your alley. If you don't like musicals, it might be a little rough.
If you do like musicals, this will be the closest thing you'll get to an anime musical.
Yeah, it's pretty much it. You guys can find more reviews for anime, including Spy Family and Chainsaw Man right now. You can find things covering Star Wars and Marvel. We've got reaction videos all here on the YouTube channel. Jammer's Breaking Geek Radio cohorts talk in depth about anything and everything you can imagine on Friday. So if you're looking for a good long form entertainment podcast, it's right here. Check it out, Breaking Geek Radio. All of our reviews and podcasts, if they're not reaction videos, go up wherever you get podcasts from, including Spotify, Apple, and Stitcher, and all the big popular ones. And you can find everything else you need in entertainment news and opinions, celebrity interviews, leaks, rumors, all sorts of stuff, covering everything you can imagine at lrmonline.com. I've been Kyle at that Kyle Malone on Twitter. Jammer, you've been what?
I've been Jammer at Jam the Writer on Twitter and at magiabooks.com, MAGIA books.com. You can check out my most recent novel, City of Mages, as I study for that.
Do it now. All right, guys, we'll see you on the next AVR.